Over the years, Superman has had many iconic villains, coming in the forms of humans, gods, other Kryptonians, and much more. However, with all these unique villains, it's worth questioning which one of these characters is Superman's strongest opponent. Though, it's contentious to who even counts as a Superman villain. While characters like Lex Luthor or Zod are clearly focused on taking Superman down, others, like Mageddon, are overall threats to the universe. So, I'll mainly focus on villains whose main enemy is Superman, but I'll mention some more contentious ones here and there. I will be talking solely about the post-crisis incarnation of these characters, and perhaps I'll cover Rebirth or some other continuity in a different video. First off, we have to eliminate some characters whose powers only really work against Superman or other Kryptonians. Characters like Lex Luthor, Metallo, Conduit, and Kryptonite Man, while capable of harming Superman, only do so via kryptonite radiation, and can't really be considered powerful strength-wise. So, while they definitely can challenge Superman, and Luthor specifically is arguably Superman's greatest enemy, they don't do this via raw strength and power. Parasite is in quite the similar area, as he only fights with his energy absorption hacks. Without that, he is not much of a fight for Superman. Moving on, let's talk about characters like the Eradicator, General Zod, Bizarro, and Ultraman. While these characters do seem like equals to Superman, they're not quite. Bizarro, while having potential possibly even greater than Cal's, isn't able to properly use this due to his lack of intelligence, and he loses Superman consistently. The Antimatter Universe Ultraman, while at times capable of fighting Superman evenly, has also been overwhelmed by Superman, even when in a 2v1 situation. He's also been beaten by Supergirl, who is Superman's inferior. Against the Ultraman from Earth 3, he gained the upper hand, while being confident he could defeat the whole crime syndicate. General Zod is a bit more confusing, as there are a few different versions of Zod. The first Zod, from the Pocket Universe, is stated to be weaker than Syndona, so he can't be Superman's strongest enemy. Superman would fight the next Zod evenly, despite the fact that this Zod was powered by red solar radiation, which we know would weaken Superman. Superman would later defeat this Zod, even when under a red sun with minimal yellow solar radiation, and could have killed him too. The next Zod simply lost Superman straight up, and was blitzed by him on a different occasion. The Eradicator is also weaker than Superman, and has been stated weaker than Cyborg Superman as well. Mongol 1 and Mongol 2, while tough opponents, are also definitely not Superman's strongest opponents. Both Mongols are apparently equal, and have lost to Superman. Mongol 1 even lost to weakened Superman, and Mongol 2 was defeated by Krypto. Mongol 1 also admitted inferiority to Cyborg Superman, who is generally treated as equal to Superman. Kal and the Cyborg have traded wins and losses over the years, but they're definitely around the same level of power, if not completely equal. So, any villain stronger than Clark also scales above the Cyborg. Gog is a common pick, though this depends on the version being talked about. The Earth 22 Gog isn't the post-crisis Superman villain, and the Earth 1 Gog is pretty clearly below Superman, with Superman clearly holding an advantage over him before being weakened. Superman and Doomsday would later fight an army of Gogs, with each one of these being the same Gog from a different point in the timeline, showing he's definitely above the Earth 1 Gog. A very common answer people give is Doomsday, which seems to make sense, as he's the only villain who actually kills Superman. However, the Superman he killed was a much weaker version than the one who appears in later post-crisis material, and many of his following fights against Superman were when the Man of Steel was mentally nerfed. In these encounters, due to his fear of Doomsday, Superman was actually incapable of using his full strength and speed, and in later encounters, he actually defeated Doomsday. Doomsday is stated to get stronger after every defeat, so Superman being able to defeat later Doomsdays is very important. It is worthy of note that at the time of death of Superman thought Doomsday likely hit him harder than anyone else, and there are statements of him being Kal's strongest opponent yet, so at least at that point, Doomsday probably was Superman's strongest opponent, but by later on, likely not. The Doomslayer, a Doomsday clone who was able to crush the Eradicator and was capable of killing every other Doomsday clone, is around Superman's level. While he did seem to have a slight advantage in his fight against Kal, Superman was weakened in this encounter, likely due to the previous challenge Superman had faced before taking on the monster. Darkseid, someone whose status as a Superman villain is debatable, is likely not his strongest opponent either. At least in his emanation form, he's lost to Superman on a few occasions. He's also kinda owned by Doomsday, even admitting he didn't know of a way to kill him. Another option is Superboy Prime, whose power is a bit inconsistent. While there are occasions where he's clearly shown as capable of hurting Clark, he's also had close encounters with Superboy, someone weaker than Superman. Either way, I don't think Base Prime has enough feats to put him as a candidate for being Superman's strongest opponent. Now, while a lot of the villains I've named are very powerful, no doubt about it, they are all seemingly around Superman's level, with many being below. However, there are villains who are seemingly more powerful than Superman, or at least were during the fights. Dominus, for example, was at an advantage during most of his fights against Krypton's last son. As well as this, Wave Rider thought his power was greater than any he had ever faced before, and Dominus pushed Superman to learn the Theta State in order to defeat him in the mental plane. Though even then he ultimately defeated him by BFRing him to the Phantom Zone. Synthona, as mentioned before, is more powerful than the Pocket Universe Kryptonians. She also forced Superman to use the sun, both to help himself and weaken her. Superman even stated she was the strongest opponent he had faced up until this point, though this is likely just in reference to physical strength and not overall power. While she did have a strong advantage over Superman during their fight, Superman still did withstand many attacks, and landed a good hit, knocking Synthona off of him, so it's not like he was exponentially weaker or anything. This is also before he learns how to use his full power better during Our Worlds at War. Imperiex is another character whose status as a Superman villain is very debatable. While Our Worlds at War was mainly a Superman comic, and the Imperiex probes first appeared in Superman comics as well, he also showed up in other characters' runs, and he was more of a threat to the whole universe than just Superman. But if he was counted, Lex Luthor considered him to be the greatest threat ever by far, and he was aware of Mageddon, who was considered to be the greatest threat to the League beforehand. But both of these do have some context. In Mageddon's case, mind control was a big part of his reason for being considered such a threat, and Imperiex had a whole plan. He was going to use many probes, the hollowing machines, and he teamed up with Brainiac 13. So, while he was likely the greatest threat as of Our Worlds at War, it's more contestable he was actually the strongest. However, we can say for certain that he was stronger than Superman, as he almost killed Superman and would have had he not been saved. Now, many viewers have probably noticed me not mentioning a certain enemy, Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mixie is quite possibly the strongest character mentioned yet, as he's consistently treated as being more powerful than Superman, and Emperor Joker, a character with almost all of Mixie's power, warped Heaven, Hell, and the Fourth World, while overpowering Darkseid, Highfather, Dr. Fate, and the Hal Jordan Spectre. While this could be partially attributed to him gaining the anti-life equation, on another occasion, Mixie says Joker could use his powers to destroy the Fourth World and even the Fifth Dimension. He also doesn't really fall under the greatest threat statements, as the reason he's less of a threat than characters like Imperiex could be due to his playful nature and not really trying to destroy creation. Emperor Joker was more focused on destroying creation, but at the same time, wasn't as comfortable with Mixie's powers as Mixie himself, so it's arguable if he's using them to the same extent that Mixie does. Now we arrive at a final verdict. I'd say the three main candidates are Dominus, Imperiex, if you count him, and Mr. Mixie. For me personally, I'd go with Mixie, due to him having more blatant feats rather than statements up to interpretation, and scaling to the Fourth World and Fifth Dimension is pretty crazy, and higher than Imperiex targeting 13 dimensions. Dominus is in a bit of an odd spot, considering a lot of his power came from his mental abilities and other hacks rather than sheer strength. Where you want to scale him can really vary, with some even scaling him below the likes of Dr. Fate. If you choose to go with Imperiex being the greatest threat, as him being the strongest, that's also a perfectly valid answer, but I think Mixie's superior showings give him the crown in this contest. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing. I would like to thank Highfather and Era for helping me research this video, and links to their Instagram pages can be found below. If you have any questions about some of the scaling, or you want the citations for each issue, or want to know why a certain villain was not mentioned, you can join a Discord server in the description below. Peace out.